As we all know, after 7 movies dating back since 1988, Chucky landed its own TV series. The significance of this is that we want to learn more about Chucky, the individual within the doll that came before it. And that's hard to do in a movie that has a plot to focus on. Curse of Chucky did pretty good with it by using a plot that has to do with Charles Lee Ray during a time where he was still alive, but in the end, it only told us a little bit more about him in terms of his tendencies and who he was affiliated with outside of Tiffany. It didn't dive into his roots. With a TV series, you get more hours of writing to include, which means more time each episode to explore those roots, while also dealing with the main plot, even tying them together. I think season 1 did this perfectly. They told us a fresh new story surrounding Jake Wheeler, used that as a way to open the door for Chucky's past to be delved into by starting with Chucky telling Jake his story, and later on, they slowly start to include movie elements such as Andy, Kyle, Tiffany, and Nika, making the show just as significant as the movie, if not more. In the end, we get the perfectly handled origin story that we came for, a fresh new story, parallel between the two, which is then all backed by the significant legacy of the films that had already been established. However, Season 2 took this for granted, if you ask me. The back end of Season 1 relies more on material that naturally ties up into the movies, things that you kind of need to tell a Chucky story nowadays. In Season 2, however, we learn new things about Chucky completely. Things that would carry more weight than something significant from the movies, going from building off of legacy to establishing its own legacy altogether, which is a bold thing to do when you're a show following a movie, not to mention a very long movie series that goes back as far as this one does. Season 1 tells us new things about Chucky, but the difference is it's only filling in the details of things that we already know. We already knew that Charles Lee Ray was known as the Electro Strangler, and that he had killed lots of people. So the show was simply showing us the hows and the whys, and giving a story behind it. Season 2, on the other hand, introduces us to critical information that we've never been known to in the 34 years since the character's debut. And by that, I mostly mean Dr. Amanda Mixter, Chucky's therapist who referred to him as Charlie, who is also apparently the entire reason why Chucky is so evil and shows no remorse. She nurtured his killer side and enabled him when otherwise he could have gotten proper help, and while maybe not completely shedding the part of him that killed his mother for basically no reason, it at least could have learned to accept that killing isn't just this thing some do, and that typically one is supposed to treat life with regard. There's been a lot of passing by references to different events from Chucky's past life throughout the continuity, like how Chucky killed Tiffany's mother, and trust me, there's a lot of references like that. They're never important details in the moment, but when you piece things together, later you realize, that's actually interesting to know. I once watched this behind the scenes clip from the original Child's Play film of a scene that wasn't used being shot, and it had Chucky confessing just before he was about to kill Dr. Ardmore that he was once given a shock treatment himself, but that he didn't believe that it worked. Obviously, I can't say that it's canon because that scene isn't used in the film, but it is fun to think about when you don't know as much about Chucky's full background. References like that help you learn something about his past, but even something like that is minor. And all the things we could have learned in passing, like the examples I just gave, the therapist who made Chucky more into who he is definitely could have been one of them. But instead, we learn about her 34 years later, not in the film, but in the last few episodes of the second season of the TV show. Granted, she was introduced in season 1, and it was revealed that she's the reason Chucky chose to go after Jake, Lexi, and Jr. But going as far as her being a crucial element to Chucky's upbringing since he was a child is a plot detail that could have been conveyed in a film to honor its significance. The reason why this matters is because I feel like there's a disconnect between films and TV shows that are supposed to take up after them. If you're a Marvel fan, then you see that with all these specials coming out, while there's also still movies coming out that are supposed to be connected, and fans who are supposed to understand the bridge between the two. Chucky's films used to be released theatrically. The last 2 films were straight digital, so everything that came out before is pretty cemented, and the Nika arc is also pretty well cemented since it got exposure on Netflix. But now the series is being premiered on USA, which ranks just outside the top 10 leading cable networks, averaging 850,000 and 740,000 viewers for the years that the show premiered, as well as Sci-Fi, which ranks nowhere on the chart at all. What's the point in introducing us to new, unexplored legacy with brand new facts to consider that weren't always there, when not nearly as many are going to see it, rather than just working with what's already there and sticking to it? It's not just Dr. Mixter either. There's a few smaller things that they do as well, like how they essentially use Season 2 as a final send-off for Andy and Kyle, the way they basically end the story of Glenn and Glenda as humans, while even changing the concept of what they originally were as a pair, and revealing to us that Jennifer Tilly has been alive and held captive all this time, and then dies. I'm not too concerned about the Glenn and Glenda thing. I mean, besides the way they ended it, that I'm personally not in favor of, but I think it's fair enough. I mean, Universal has been critical about reintroducing them in the films that came after Seed, since it wasn't exactly the best thing for the franchise. And if the show is the one chance that they have to finally bring them on, then they might as well do so at its full capacity and use it to tell their story as far as they can go. But when it comes to everything else, the Jennifer Tilly twist, sending off Andy and Kyle, and introducing Dr. Mixter, I feel like these are things that could have been reserved for an 8th Chucky film. That's all. So what do you all think? Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts. I also plan to talk more about Chucky as Season 3 approaches, so tune in for more videos like this. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.